called Resiliency Village. If you don't mind, I'll just stand up. So
Yes.
And this has happened so fast, I haven't even had a chance to talk to my friend Amy about, we're about to bust a new nonprofit too. This just blew up really quickly.
Did Harvey reach you yet?
No.
I shared this
Harvey
with,
Chess?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he said he got in touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got a project with him that you're gonna love this year, so we'll talk later.
So as I mentioned, I'm the homeless and foster youth liaison. I've done that for 15 years in Jamestown, and I do this for the county here through the superintendent's office. So I work directly with kids who are traumatized and their families. I've been doing this for a long time. And then in the course of that, got involved in other working with homeless issues all around the county and beyond here. Spend a lot of time in the camps, and with Perry and Aaron's help, just finished up the point in time count where we go around, we find out where the homeless people are and count them. And we do that every year. And in January is when the official HUD count is, and last time we found 360 homeless folks. When we did it in the summer, there were 719. In Jamestown we found 59, and 9 of them were children.
Wow.
So there's a lot of this in our county, and this costs us in a lot of different ways. We have, I don't know if you just saw in the newspaper yesterday, a homeless man was hit on his bicycle over by the camp. He had to be med-flighted out. It's going to be a pretty expensive hospital bill there. Homeless people spend a lot of time going to the emergency room. Homeless people take a lot of police resources, a lot of mental health resources, and a lot of that centers around the trauma that they've had in their lives. And once you are traumatized, it's a brain injury. It's a very deep brain injury that has a lot of different effects. And the way we measure these traumatizing events is called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. So a couple of wellness doctors developed a scale to measure this on. They have 10 questions, and they ask you things like, have you ever seen violence in your home? Have you ever been a victim of violence? Have you ever been a victim of sexual assault? Have you grown up with someone who has mental illness in your home, someone who's a substance abuser, someone who's gone to jail? Have you ever felt neglected? Have you, so there's 10 questions. They standardize that. So if you have 4 or more of these ACEs in your life, adverse childhood experiences, you are 8 times more likely to be an alcoholic. In which, with each additional ACE, negative outcomes, everything from your risk for cancer, kidney disease, not being able to hold relationships, not being able to hold a job goes up and up and up. By the time you have 6 adverse childhood experiences in your life, your life expectancy is reduced by 20 years. That's how strong the connection is between being traumatized and winding up in poverty and homelessness situations. It's one of the absolute slam dunks of data to look at this correlation between these experiences and these results. Now, it's not an automatic. There can be intervention, and some people have built-in resiliency. Some people overcome ACE scores of 9 and 10. And I do presentations like this to like large groups of social workers or teachers or other high-functioning people, mostly in helping professions. And I use a program called Poll Everywhere, where I can actually give the ACE exam, show the results for the room up on a big screen, and then we go through the questions. Not everybody, no one will know anyone else's answers, but you'll see the group's ACE score. And in large groups, there are people all the time with ACE scores of 8 or more, and usually in helping groups, they have over the average of the ACE scores that get you into these kinds of troubles. But something happened in their lives that they were able to be resilient, so they are now helping other people. So we know that your ACE score is not your destiny, but without intervention, without some kind of help, you're likely to wind up in this situation. So after working on this for years and then looking at this homeless problem, I had a boss, a superintendent, who retired a couple years ago and came back to me and said, can I help you with this trauma stuff? I'm tired of sitting on the sidelines. I've been out of work for a couple years. She was over the death of her husband, and she just really wanted to get back into it. We sat down with another friend of ours, and we came up with a plan to address this, because as you know, like, our board of supervisors has been meeting and having a task force to discuss the homeless issue for over 2 years, and did not propose one single solution or plan to deal with it. Just non-stop talk and conversation about it. Kind of burned a lot of people out. Same with city council. And I've talked to them on and off, and they're saying, well, we can't. There's always a reason why they can't do something. So the group of us came together and formulated a plan, and then had a graphic made for it. And I'm going to pass this around just so you can have a quick look at it. And I presented this at the Motherlode Martin Luther King event not even 2 weeks ago. I was one of the featured speakers because the theme of the day was poverty. And I was the last speaker, and by the time I was done with my 10-minute speech, the room erupted in applause, and people went crazy about the concept of addressing these issues through focusing on people's trauma. And that's been the big part of what's missing, is that we don't take into account what is actually causing this. In school, when we want to become trauma informed, what we try to do is get people to change their lens, we call it, to see not what is wrong with this kid, but what happened to this kid. I actually do a bunch of the training. If you train here, you'll probably see me in that training, because I do part of that. And when your lens starts to shift to understand that the behaviors that you're seeing, the unwanted behaviors that you're seeing in these children, are not a mental defect or not an attempt to mess with you or cause trouble. They are an actual biological response to the stress of the trauma that this child has experienced. And so traditional and conventional methods of behavior modification that work for your children or other kids who are not traumatized do not work with traumatized children. And in fact, you have a good chance of popping off another trigger and having an outburst of something, and you just don't understand why this child is doing this until you start to look at it through the lens of trauma. And when you start to look at it through the lens of trauma, it all makes sense. I don't ever see a misbehaving child anymore. My mind immediately goes to what happened to this child. And I don't have to know the details. All I have to know is, no doubt there's trauma behind this. By the time you're removed and put into foster care, we know you've been traumatized multiple times. And so foster kids have some really horrific outcomes. Less than half of them graduate from high school. Probably some of the worst outcomes. 60% of kids who age out of foster care will be either homeless, incarcerated, or dead within 18 months. That's what data tells us. 70% of girls who age out of foster care will be pregnant within 2 years. Thus continuing the cycle of ongoing generational poverty, homelessness, and that kind of misery. So when we look at that and say, how can we address this? How can we get at the roots of this problem? The people who've been successful, and one of the models that we really, please take a picture and share it. And I put this online. So after that speech at the Martin Luther King thing, we did breakout groups. I was prepared for a breakout group of maybe 10 people. There's a room about this size and it was packed wall to wall with people. People signed up, got on the email list. They said, everyone's saying, I would like to help you with this. And the model for doing this is to build a coalition of people who will address this. A coalition that includes government, nonprofits, education, business, concerned people, and the homeless and afflicted themselves. All those people work together to make a self-governing place where trauma is addressed. Housing is made the first priority. If you really want to help people, despite their drug addiction and their alcohol addiction and their other addictions, which are actually for them medicine, we look at this the wrong way, and we've been trying to solve this as a legal problem, and what it is a mental health issue. It's an issue of trauma, and you will never legislate people out of using whatever means they can to get themselves out of pain. I don't care how hard you try it. We had Just Say No, we had the war on drugs, which is a war on traumatized people. And the result of this is people living in homelessness for the rest of their lives and having babies who then continue this ongoing struggle and cycle. So the people who've been successful so far, the models that we looked at that were successful, operate on a housing first basis. House people first. Give them the dignity of a place to live where they're not fearful. Because one of the greatest things that is taken from you when you are traumatized is your sense of safety. You can never trust again. It gets so bad to the point where people actually burn out their adrenal glands by being constantly fearful. Your brain is rewired so hard that you actually alter your DNA. You can epigenetically pass trauma onto your children even if they are not traumatized. And this has been proven. I've got a little time. I'll just tell you there's a big test with rats. They starved rats. The rats exhibit certain behaviors when they're starving. They fatten those rats up. The rats have babies. The babies exhibit the behavior of a starved rat because it was passed on what's called epigenetically. So trauma can be in kids who don't ever even have it themselves, but most likely, the ones who have it epigenetically are also going to experience it in real life. Because not only in your family can you be traumatized, but you can be traumatized by environmental factors. The neighborhood you live in maybe has a high percentage of violent crime or any kind of crime, substance abuse, poverty itself, which is a traumatic event. You can also be institutionally traumatized. We do that in schools by not understanding trauma. We do that in our legal system. We re-traumatize people who are already traumatized and wonder why they have recidivism. So, back to this model, housing first, low barrier housing. Low barrier housing means we're not going to let you use or drink on site, but if that's your medicine, we're going to make sure you're housed first, make sure you have a safe place to come to, and then we're going to offer the services that will help you deal with your addiction or whatever other mental health issues you have are. So those two things plus the coalition, then you have to prioritize this. And you have to have a point person or a point organization that it is their business to help people get off the street and be housed. We do not have that here. I've met with the housing people for Tuolumne County, and their job is to help developers come in and build affordable housing, which is a great thing to do. But it is not their job to help homeless people or to get homeless people off the street. And part of our homeless issue is that we're one of the last counties to get RIM fees for developers. We say that we have plans that you have to put in so much affordable housing when you build, but we've let people get around that in a million other ways, and right now we have an absolute housing crisis. I deal with people every single day who have housing vouchers, Section 8 vouchers. They cannot find a place to use that voucher. That's how scarce housing is in our county. Forget if you've ever had an eviction or any kind of trouble in rental. If I'm a landlord, why would I pick you over people with good credit and steady jobs and stuff? So we are ensuring that we're going to have this problem almost by design. We haven't properly taken a long-term view to say, how will we address this issue? So that's what this plan does, is say, in a long-term way, we want to deal with your trauma, which is at the root of your homelessness, your poverty, your suffering. In the short term, we want to make sure there's immediate housing for you. And then one of the last things that, one of the successful models that did this, they made sure that they had what was called a homeless trust fund. See, right now, if I'm just a concerned person or I'm a business person and I maybe even got $1,000 that I would put towards this problem, I go, well, where would I put my $1,000 and how would it actually help somebody? I'm not going to personally go out, I would, but most of you are not going to go out to the camps, sort through, figure out who I'm going to give this money to and see if I can help them. If there's a homelessness trust, every single dollar that whoever from the community puts into that, they can be rest assured that there's an organization that is dedicated solely to working with that population. So in Bergen County, New Jersey, which has nearly 100,000 people in it, they adopted that 5-point plan, and they have virtually eliminated homelessness in Bergen County, New Jersey, and especially chronic homelessness. They've taken that completely off the map, and people can find shelter there because of that 5-point plan. Housing first, low barrier housing, coalition of people, a point person that's dedicated to it, and a trust fund that funds that. So that is what this diagram you're looking at has, and these are some of the elements that we wanted to bring to the homeless population, including down here the dignity of work. That's one of the big things that is a misunderstanding about homeless people. They think they're homeless by choice. I have not met a homeless by choice person. I don't know, sometimes they're saying, yeah, I'm not going to go to the shelter because I can't drink there, or I'm not going to do this, but it's because there's a barrier. There is no one choosing to be out in these rainstorms in those filthy camps night after night. That's not their choice, their first choice. That's because they don't have the dignity of shelter, they don't have the dignity of work. And when people tell me, why can't you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps? I really want to take that person, and I want to take their money and their identity away from them and put them in one of these places. Heck, I'll even spot them $200. And I'm going to say, get yourself out of this situation.
First you got to taser their brain.
Yeah, I'll even let you keep all your smarts. You just can't tell people who you are, and you can't have your resume. And see if you can get yourself out of this situation. And it's going to be 1 in a million people who can do that. Because once you're in the spiral, it goes down, it goes worse. And if you go out there and talk to the people in the camps, many of them have jobs, many of them have Social Security, and they say, I thought I'd be able to save some money staying out here. But here's the issue. everything costs more. I can't buy any food to store, so I have to buy the most expensive food. I can't transport myself anywhere because now I've given bikes away and things like that. I'm one of the guys got hit on a bike. Every time I want to even just go fill a propane tank, I have to call a cab because how am I going to carry a propane tank all the way? How much does water weigh? These things take so much time and effort that they actually wind up becoming poorer than what they were when they started. And one of the things that I've learned about poverty and working with these people is poverty charges interest. If I start out poor and I don't have the money to deal with, I have a toothache, pretty soon I have an abscess, then I need a root canal, and I don't have the money for that, then I'm losing teeth, now I can't eat. Poverty is charging me interest. If I have my car, the kids come to me, I can't wait to buy a car, I got $1,500. I'm like, buy a good bicycle. You'll be better off with the car. But okay, you get the $1,500 car, and it's not long before the $1,500 car is a radiator leak or a water pump that's not working or a blown head gasket. I'm poor. I can't afford to fix it when it first starts. So it gets worse and worse, and then the car breaks down. Plus, I couldn't afford the registration or the insurance. So now the car's towed, now it's impounded, and now I have a huge bill to put on top of it. Poverty charges interest. One of the best ways to wind up poor is to start out poor. One of the best ways to wind up homeless is to start out traumatized in a poor family. That's the path towards that. This plan addresses that. So the next part of the next phase of this is getting out to business people, to government, and to those that are dealing with this and say, we can actually save you money. We're working on the budget and everything for this, going to the hospital and saying, how much are you paying for emergency room visits and all of these things that homeless people use because they don't have a place to get served right here. In communities that are successful with this, hospitals give money to programs like this that get homeless people off the street and get them their services right there where they live. If I went to the county, and again, if we put a plan together and say, how much are you spending on police resources? How much are you spending on mental health resources? How much are you spending in all these other ways to deal with people because they don't have what we have here in this plan? And you guys haven't come up with it yet. There's a void of leadership, and I can tell that people want to do this because our email list is exploding. I'm not keeping up, and I've heard from people out of state. I've heard from doctors, lawyers, medical health professionals of all sorts, social workers, teachers, and all kinds of educators who say, I would volunteer my time to work on this, at least to get this thing started. And I've talked to doctors before, and that's part of why we got motivated to do this, when we say to me, I hate dealing with Medi-Cal. I would rather volunteer 1 day a week or 1 day a month, somewhere where I could provide services to people who need it and just do it directly that way than to deal with the hassle of Medi-Cal. And I've seen that work at a big homeless camp in Stockton. So this is a work in progress. Perry, do you have any paper and pen? If any of you in here want to get on the email list, we would take your names and just keep you in the list as we're having some planning meetings coming up. I'm meeting with a web designer this week so we can have organized social media presence.
Is that Robert?
I mean, this just blew up so fast that the email list is close to 100 names already, and there are no slouches on it. Every single person has skills and desire and want to do something about this. And then the next part is to secure a place and financing. And Colette Setch, who's a city council person, said she was closing down a nonprofit. She said, I had to get it all up to legal status before I could actually legally close it. She said, so what I would rather do than close it now that I'm getting it up there is just turn this over to you. You guys can install a new board of directors and you'll have your nonprofit within a week or so.
Oh, that's
and then we'll be able to start
Yeah.
accepting financing and support like that. And I've had several grant writers say, I will volunteer to grant write for you. Because in the follow-up letter that I sent out, I said, these are the kind of people that we need. And oh yeah, and if you're a billionaire who wants to pay it forward and do something good, you can also finance us. And I haven't heard from that person yet, but every other person on the list that I asked for, I have heard from. People with gardening skills, with skills to teach the things that are on here. And then this also includes a couple things where we actually have some sustainability built in, because I've worked in nonprofit for a long time, and I know all funders want to see sustainability after they get you up and running, which would include an Airbnb. One of the successful places has that, and people will purposefully stay at an Airbnb that they know supports homeless people, so they have a space in there for that. We also have the idea of trading and doing a restaurant, or even food trucks, because now we're giving these people the skills, and then we have some sustainability built in there. And a couple of the other programs that could give people work and also fund the place. So this is a result of Dr. Chapman, my former boss, is many years of doing this, and she's a music therapist too. So we have the people who do the therapy and the work on your trauma, people who are good at running nonprofits, and people who say, I will point this for you. I will make this a vision that is successful. Now we just need to talk our leaders and business folks. I mean, like, if you run a business downtown, we've all heard the complaints. These homeless people are sleeping in my doorway. These homeless people are defecating on the benches. These homeless people. Okay, what if we went to businesses and said, you can sponsor a tiny home for the money that you're spending cleaning up and the time you're spending to go and complain about this? What if you just sponsored one of these tiny homes that we can build for $2,500? I'm pretty sure we can talk some people into doing that because it would be a better investment. And I would love to pull up with a bus to the Stockton homeless camp and say, y'all can get on. We're going to take you to a place that's clean, safe, and we're going to help you with a few other things, and this mess is left behind. And I'm pretty sure that would be celebrated here in Tuolumne County if we could close these camps. And that's the goal of this.
He's talking about the one at the camp down by Stockton Road.
Stockton Road.
Yeah. Stockton Road County
Not
camp.
Stockton.
Not
Several.
Stockton itself. Yeah, there's several camps in there,
Several.
and there's one behind Lowe's. There's one out in Columbia. There's one up at the end of Greenlee. There are camps around, and then people come and go in different parts of Jamestown. But it would be really nice to just pull up and say, I've got a bed for you and a place where you can be.
Has anyone asked to have you look at property yet?
We have taken a look at a few pieces of property.
Great.
Did you say $2,500 tiny home? Could you elaborate on that for a second?
One of the successful models that we have, and if you sign on the email, I'll send you links to go look at these things. In Springfield, Missouri, they bought an old trailer park, got rid of all the old trailers, and on each space they put a tiny home, and they asked business people to sponsor. And I think business people sponsor at $2,500 a piece, and they need 2 sponsors for each home or something like that, and they could build that 400 square foot tiny home for a homeless person to live in for that amount of money, and give it. And they, I mean, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's not that much money. It's completely affordable. It's does somebody take on the project and make it happen? So
So
that
2 sponsors per unit,
was something like
around
that.
$5,000.
Yeah.
Now, was the labor volunteered and all the money went into?
Well, I'll tell you that where we have the radio station is in West Point, and that's a nonprofit called the Blue Mountain Coalition for Youth and Families, and we converted an old hardware store and lumberyard into the community center. Then someone donated a community garden space. We have the most amazing community garden, and we are right now part of a pilot project where 4 tiny houses are going in the space that we saved for the garden to do that. And we're using sheds that are built by the Mennonite builder out on Highway 49. I don't know if you ever go by there. That guy's a really good builder. And then we have so we take the shed, and then we have a local contractor who's volunteering to make that livable, and that's an example of how that was done there.
Okay.
So yeah, the whole thing is done. Different places will do it different ways, but you can buy what you need. I mean, there's a kid on YouTube that built an amazing tiny house for $1,500.
Yeah, I saw that
You've seen
video,
it. So
yeah.
this is an absolutely affordable, logical solution to this issue.
The numbers stuck out because years ago a friend of mine was working in Nicaragua, and he gives a lot of people down, and he said, Rich, you could just give me $2,500, I'll get a house built down here. So we did it, and I flew down there, and I met the family. And when you do that, that is quite a circle to meet that lady who doesn't have a husband but has 3 children. Now she's living in this place that you built for $2,500.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. So to do that locally around here to help out would be amazing.
And what happens then is those people start helping people that come after them.
Amazing.
Yeah, I've seen it over and over and over again.
Opposite domino effect.
Yeah, because it's the same thing with the kids who are traumatized and they come to school. No kid wakes up in the morning and says, I can't wait to go to school and get suspended today. It's going to be awesome to have the teacher yell at me. It's going to be so cool to take the perp walk down to the principal's office. I just can't wait to do that. The kid doesn't say that when he gets up in the morning. The kid wants to have a good day just like every single person sitting in this room. But when you have that kind of brain injury that trauma brings on you, you don't know what's going to be triggered. A normal kid gets bumped in the lunch line. He has a process that says bump in lunch line, kid behind me, this happens all the time. He has a way to regulate, bring himself back down. A kid who's traumatized if your barometer of blowing up is, like you're up here, that kid starts right here every day. Most of us are down here by our knees. We have some methods, right? We can go up and down. We rarely get over that. A traumatized kid gets bumped in line, turns around, bam, and smacks the kid because it's a trigger for him. And then, this process starts, and that's what we call the school to prison pipeline. And the kids who they don't need a timeout, they need a time in. They need more time in than anybody, are the ones who are suspended and expelled the most. And we know that they drop out of high school and they wind up incarcerated more than any other kid. Our foster youth and our homeless kids are punished and penalized at far greater rates than their non-traumatized peers. And it's really not their fault. And when your lens changes, when you start to see that, you never will see a misbehaving child again. You look at them and say, what can I do for you?
You must be happy with the new Surgeon General.
Yeah, the new Surgeon General, and I'm happy with Gavin Newsom's budget to put a bunch of money into homelessness and into preschool. We get more bang for our buck getting to those kids super young and their young parents than we'll ever get trying to correct the behaviors of high school kids.
I have a twofold question. So you see therapies, different types of therapies for people that have suffered trauma, that are homeless, that are of adult age. So you see these different types of therapies happening here at this place to help these people. Do you also see, and the second part of this question, helping the youth as well, the troubled youth, like you see in Jamestown Elementary and Sonora Elementary?
Absolutely, because what we have here is a large population of TAY, transitional age youth, who are homeless. I got my school bus license a few years ago because I love to drive buses. I do it sporadically, but I make bus drivers in the training. And one of the high school bus drivers told me, she said, about half of my kids are couch surfing. I pick them up in different places every single day or every few days. Half of her high school students are couch surfing. We have a unseen population of transitional age youth between the ages 17 and 25. We have homeless minors as young as 15 years old, 14 years old, who are making it on their own all through this country. They need a place to stay. And they're the hardest ones to house because they can't stay at the shelters. They can't stay in a lot of, I have a few ways to get them in that especially the Center for Nonviolent Community will help me house a TAY youth, a transitional age youth. But they're the hardest ones to even get a hold of because they know they have to stay secret. They don't want to go into foster care. They don't want to get their parents in trouble no matter how bad the relationship is with the parents. They just want to do what they can do. And some of them graduate high school. Some of them do really well, but the vast majority are struggling out there to make it. We know that, for instance, again, foster kids, if you age out of foster care, you have a 3% chance of ever getting a college degree in your life. That's some pretty dismal statistics. But a couple of years ago, I was at a foster conference in Sacramento, and I got to hang out with a couple of really successful foster kids. One was in a master's program at UCLA, and the other one was about to go into a master's program at USC. And we were going to the offices of assemblymen and senators to lobby. And we had appointments with those people. When you get there, I don't know how much time you've ever spent in the state capitol. The place is crawling with lobbyists. You can't go anywhere. You can't step on an elevator without suits. Some of them even wear corporate labels on their shirts and stuff. That's all they talk. The place is crawling with them. So we get there, and both of these appointments that were made to talk to the person, we were preempted by a lobbyist in the back room, and we had to talk to an aide. But these kids were amazing people. You just go, oh, how could I not help you? How could I not do whatever I could for you? I was so blown away working with those kids.
Mark, I want to thank you. We're out of time.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I could go on forever for this.
You did great. Thank you very much.